to a tale of heroes reborn and adventure relived. Today, The Eagle, the comic that gripped the imaginations of many children in the 1950s and 60s, entered on a new lease of life, by courtesy of the world's largest magazine publisher, IPC. But is the time ripe for this revival? Can the comic that first thrilled us more than 30 years ago with creations like PC-49, Colonel Tweed, and of course Dan Dare, still pull in young readers today? Gavin Scott now reports on the once and future Eagle.
His name was Dan Dare. He knew every judo hold in the book. He was ready for anything, and so were his friends. They had to be. They faced every known evil the universe could throw at them, and won. Dare was a hero to a generation of schoolchildren in the 50s.
Actually, Dan Dare started off as a strip intended for a Sunday newspaper, and he was called Lex Christian at that time. He was meant to be a sort of parson in the tough East End of London, and that didn't work out. Then he became, for Eagle, he became a padre to begin with. He was the padre to the Interplanetary Fleet. And then as we went on developing the whole thing, and developing the idea of Eagle, then he became the hero of the strip. And we dropped the idea of him being a padre or anything else like that.
And so Eagle burst into the national consciousness on April 14th, 1950, glowing with every colour printer's ink could create, and conjuring up, in artist Frank Hampson's brilliant illustrations, a Britain so far beyond the world of the ration book that chaps who had so recently flown our Lancasters over Germany now flew our spaceships towards Venus, led, of course, by none other than Dan Dare. Some of the models for the characters in Dan Dare were actually real people, were they not?
Well, they were indeed, yes. Frank Hampson was very particular about this. For his own father, for example, was the model for the Colonel. And my youngest daughter was, in fact, the model for the Meakin. She was about 5 at the time, and she had a very large head in comparison with her body, and she used to perch on the shoulders of Frank Hampson's father while Frank drew her. And we always tease her about this ever since, you know, but Frank was absolutely, really particular about having all the detail of everything absolutely right. He had models of everything in his studio there, of uniforms and spaceships and the whole lot, you know. He was a real perfectionist, Hampson. Marvellous strip cartoon artist.
Of course, the Eagle didn't just have Dan Dare. It had wonderful blow-up diagrams of trains and engines. It had cowboy stories, complete with pesky Indians. It had celebrations of British technology. And it had yard after yard of muscular Christianity, full of moral uplift. As the 50s progressed, Eagle became a respected national institution, fully approved of by churches, schools, and parents. But then came the 60s, with different heroes for the young, different owners for the magazine, and different artists for Dan Dare. According to Marcus Morris, who'd moved on, Eagle's death was a slow and painful one, and though Dan Dare was put to sleep in full colour in the last issue in April 1969, when he reawoke in The Lion and Eagle in May 1969, he'd been reduced to monochrome, and soon he disappeared altogether. The original owners of Eagle had been swallowed up by the giant publishing conglomerate IPC, and though they attempted half-heartedly to bring Dan Dare back as a superhero in the mid-70s, when it didn't come off, they returned him without a tremor to suspended animation.
That one again, you see, isn't quite right, is it?
It was only last year, with comic readership continuing to decline, that the corporation's executives decided on really drastic measures. Not just bringing back Dan Dare, but reviving the entire Eagle comic, complete with the Meakin.
I mean, it's tried, obviously, but I think the background's wrong for it. If it's going to be for our front cover,
yes, it's too old, isn't it?
It's always been a great temptation for me personally to get involved in a new Eagle.
I read The Old Eagle as a boy. It was delivered to my house every week. In fact, last night I found my original Eagle fan club membership. So it means a great deal to me, and I've tried once or twice to persuade people to bring it back, and this time I was successful by producing a dummy that people liked.
Why do you think you were successful this time? What is it about the Times that convinced your bosses that they could put money into a new Eagle?
Well, we've taken a big step forward by using photographs in the new Eagle, because the old Eagle had a reputation of being a magazine that was ahead of its time. And we've tried to do the same thing with this new Eagle, and by using photographs, it's produced that result, and we're very pleased with it.
Well, the script does suggest that it should be a Norman church, so I think this angle, honest contact here.
Instead of line drawings, most of the stories in the new Eagle are in photographic form, with stills taken of actors in costume, the photographs juggled for maximum dramatic effect, and captions added. One of the most dramatic tales starts with the arrival of a strange craft in the English countryside and the appearance of a terrible creature called the Doom Lord, whose implacable desire it is to take over the world. The rest of the magazine contains features on readers, an interview with Doctor Who, a school football story, a police serial, and, above all, Dan Dare. The artwork for the new series is remarkably like the splendid pictures Frank Hampson created in the 50s, and though the artist is an Englishman living in Switzerland, the spaceships are just as they used to be, and the story picks right up where it left off. The Treens, with the Mekon in exile, have become simple, peace-loving folk, but the Mekon returns to lead them, searches out Dan Dare on the galactic computer, and comes to Earth for what proves to be a spine-chilling shock. A mystery you must buy next week's issue to solve. So pleased were IPC with their first number of the New Eagle that they threw themselves into the launch at the Waldorf Hotel today with positively comic book gusto. As the journalists swarmed up for their free copies, eager to find out if the comic measured up to their memories of childhood thrills, IPC executives reminded themselves that this whole experiment had cost nearly £500,000, and the big question was, how would it all go down? Comic expert and historian Dennis Gifford.
Well, I rather like it, as a matter of fact. I quite like the look of it. The only thing that worries me as an ex-cartoonist is the number of photo stories. You know, photographs of people playing football with balloons. Admittedly, they've got traditional speech balloons of all comic. Well, I can't see anybody saying oops and eek like we used to in our day. But
What about Dan Dare? That's the crucial thing.
Well, Dan Dare is the crucial thing. Well, they've got a very good artist here called Jerry Embleton, who is the brother of the magnificent Ron Embleton. And I rather like the look of it. I mean, he draws very much like Ron, and in turn he draws somewhat like the original Frank Hampson. Not totally, of course. Will anybody ever draw again like the real Frank Hampson? But it's not bad, is it? Not at all bad.
And indeed, that was the general view. Nostalgia had been titillated, if not satisfied. But nostalgia won't pay back £500,000. Only the children of Britain can do that with their weekly